Over 50 million Americans travel 50 miles or more from home for Thanksgiving, making it one of the busiest travel periods of the year. In the United States, Thanksgiving is a huge deal. But why is that? Why do Americans celebrate Thanksgiving? The story of the first Thanksgiving begins in the early 17th century, in 1621, in what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts. The newly arrived Pilgrims faced daunting challenges. These settlers, seeking religious freedom and a new life away from Europe, had endured a perilous journey across the Atlantic on the Mayflower and a harsh first winter that claimed many lives. Their survival in this new land, far from their home across the sea, was far from guaranteed. As spring arrived, the Pilgrims encountered members of the Wampanoag tribe, Native Americans who inhabited the region. The Wampanoag, led by the Sachem Massasoit, approached the settlers cautiously, but with a willingness to help. This interaction marked a critical turning point for the struggling Pilgrims. Among the Native Americans, a man named Tisquantum, or Squanto, stood out. He had previously been taken to Europe as a slave and had learned English, making him an invaluable translator and mediator. Squanto taught the Pilgrims essential survival skills, such as how to cultivate corn, extract sap from maple trees, catch fish in the rivers, and identify which plants were poisonous. Thanks to these lessons and the alliance with the Wampanoag, the Pilgrims' agricultural efforts flourished. By the fall of 1621, they had a successful harvest, crucial for their survival in the upcoming winter. To celebrate this success and give thanks for their survival and the help they received, the Pilgrims organized a feast. This feast, which we now regard as the first Thanksgiving, was a 3-day event. It included about 53 Pilgrims and 90 Native Americans, including Massasoit. The menu of this feast was a far cry from the modern Thanksgiving dinner. It likely included venison, as the Wampanoag contributed 5 deer to the celebration. Wildfowl such as ducks, geese, and turkeys were also plentiful. The feast also featured seafood like fish and shellfish, which were abundant in the region, but they didn't have mashed potatoes, candied yams, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie. From this 1621 event onward, other English colonies also held sporadic days of feasts when circumstances warranted rejoicing over events like rainfall ending a drought or surviving a harsh winter. Still, they weren't occurring as any unified, established holiday. That transformation was still a couple of centuries away. So how did Thanksgiving become a national holiday? While harvest celebrations popped up now and then in colonial America, Thanksgiving did not become a widely observed national holiday right away. Its elevation to a fixed event across all states took centuries of effort and advocacy. One prominent voice leading the campaign to establish Thanksgiving as a nationwide occasion was Sarah Josepha Hale. As editor of the popular Godey's Ladybook magazine, Hale used her platform to rally support for a regular Thanksgiving holiday. She wrote editorials and even campaigned by writing letters to 5 presidents and dozens of governors urging their support. After 17 years of persistent advocacy from Hale and others, in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed the last Thursday in November would be celebrated as Thanksgiving across the country. Part of Lincoln's aim was to unite Americans through shared tradition during the tumult of the Civil War. His proclamation set the stage for every following president to annually declare the holiday. But in 1939, November had 5 Thursdays, so President Franklin D. Roosevelt chose the 4th Thursday instead of the 5th one for Thanksgiving. However, some state governors adhered to the customary final Thursday for the holiday. It took until 1941 for Congress to officially nail down the fixed date for celebrating. On December 26, 1941, both the House and Senate passed a law declaring the 4th Thursday as Thanksgiving Day across the country, with no variations allowed. President Roosevelt signed the resolution into law in 1942, solidifying Thanksgiving as a federal holiday, falling on the same date for all states, and Americans have been filling up on turkey, mashed potatoes, pie, and football games on that 4th Thursday ever since. But why do Americans traditionally eat turkey on Thanksgiving? Native turkeys flourished across North America, and the early colonists took readily to hunting them. Compared to domesticated chickens brought from Europe, turkeys made for a more lavish main course for special meals and celebrations. Historical documents indicate turkeys were likely part of the offerings during 1621's original Plymouth plantation harvest celebration. The colony's governor wrote of how their men went out hunting for wild turkeys and waterfowl as part of the feast preparations. So we can see the turkey's significance as a celebratory food dates back 400 years. By the mid-20th century, the turkey bird achieved even greater status through marketing campaigns. Poultry and turkey producers wanted to boost American consumption of turkey meat, and what better way to make it a can't-miss component of the beloved national holiday than advertisements? They cemented the idea of roast turkey as the quintessential centerpiece of Thanksgiving dinner. Today, between 46 million and 55 million turkeys are consumed each Thanksgiving, so the marketing worked. For most American families, gathering around a roasted turkey is now a social ritual. For Americans, Thanksgiving is also about expressing thankfulness for life's blessings and gifts. The tradition to give thanks dates back to ancient harvest festivals. In England, harvest festivals were celebrated as far back as antiquity. The sentiment feels almost instinctual and timeless. Thanksgiving allows Americans to tap into this age-old practice, but with their own national spin. In the United States, Thanksgiving is also associated with American football. The association between Thanksgiving and football dates back to 1876, just a few years after the game itself was codified. This was when the newly formed American Intercollegiate Football Association held its first championship game on Thanksgiving Day. This date was chosen due to its national significance and because it was a convenient time for students at different colleges to gather. Princeton and Yale, two of the era's collegiate football powerhouses, played their annual game on Thanksgiving, drawing large crowds and increasing the sport's popularity. As football gained popularity in the early 20th century, high schools and colleges began to adopt the Thanksgiving football tradition. Many high schools across the country still play their annual rivalry games on Thanksgiving morning. The National Football League embraced this tradition in 1934, when the Detroit Lions, a relatively new team looking to attract fans, played the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. The game was a success, both in attendance and radio listenership, cementing the Lions' Thanksgiving game as an annual event. Since then, the NFL has added more Thanksgiving games, offering a full slate of matchups that have become a staple of the holiday.